Welcome to Share Talk, the only podcast where investors come first.
Hello and welcome to Share Talk. Today I'm joined by Antonio Russo and Trevor Taylor, who are joint CEOs of Zoetic International. How are you today, gentlemen?
Doing well. How are you, Zach?
I'm doing fine, and I think Zoetic's been doing fine. It's been a good period since the summer for the share price. I think we're up from sub 10p or even sub 5p to 70 pence plus. So you've clearly pleased your shareholders in the interim. The whole cannabis space, it's rocketed and ballooned over recent months. But just tell us how Zoetic fits into that particular ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. So we've developed two different brands in this space. The first brand is under the name Zoetic. It's only being distributed there in the UK and eventually Europe right now. That brand is very specific to more of a kind of a higher end luxury cosmetic side of the play. We developed that brand with a very specific purpose to tap that into the market and just make sure that we can develop and continue to put out just really good products. And the success of that brand has been tremendous. We've won numerous awards, probably most notably the GQ mention in their magazine and just many other. And so we've been very thankful for that brand and working hard and just putting it out in front. Obviously, the new announcement that we had yesterday will bring to light our first brick and mortar distribution for that brand upon the completion of the FSA application acceptance and that whole process with Novel Foods. Should start putting that into some pretty well-known retailers over there in the UK. So that's the first brand that we've built together. The second brand, I'll let Antonio talk a little bit about. It's our tobacco alternative brand called Chill.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Yeah, so the Chill tobacco alternative brand, we've had great success. We wanted to focus in on major distribution. Being in the cannabis space for the last 10 years, I've seen what brands have excelled and what brands have suffered. And you really need to be first to the market, and you need great shelf space. And there's brands all over the world that would love to be in the situation Zoetic is. We have tens of thousands of distribution set up, and how we did that was by surrounding ourselves with the most brilliant in the industry. Eric Schrader, who I'd love to get on your show sometime, Zach, but their family has 84 years of history. They've seen the Gatorade into the market, the Red Bulls into the market. Our goal at Chill is to build a memorable brand, household name like that throughout the globe. And you can only do that with great partners and distribution. With that being said, you can't just get on the shelf and just ignore it. You have to have a strategy and a plan. It's almost like you can't launch a rocket without the fuel. So we have a very strategic plan that we're implementing right now to help us succeed in the store, sell-through rate, and become that memorable brand. And we can only do that by surrounding ourselves with the very best people. Trevor and I always, walk out of meetings and say, okay, who can we surround ourselves with today that can help us achieve our goal? And that's what we've done. And we're also building out our online distribution, and we're formulating our team right now to do what we've done on the brick and mortar front.
Right. So, I think from what you said over the last, both of you said over the last couple of minutes, there are a few points to look at here. Let's say in terms of the space you're in, there's a bit of a gold rush at the moment. I alluded to the investors getting investors on the market. There's many of the stocks are now worth billions of dollars in this particular space. But there are also many brands, many companies going into your space, and presumably it's a bit like day trading the market. Most of them don't have the expertise. Most of them don't really know what they're doing. They're trying to play on centre court, Wimbledon centre court, when they're not Roger Federer. They just happen to play tennis once a year or once a decade. So presumably you've got expertise, which has come from your retail backgrounds. You've got the legal side, which was a big issue with the whole cannabis space until very recently. So all that's put to bed. And so that you've got USP in terms of your brands, you've got the barriers to entry have been covered, and then you've got that sector experience as well. So are those the factors that make Zoetic what it is?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot that goes into building any brand, but when you when you do that within the new space of CBD and the ever-changing regulations, and in some cases, there are very few regulations that you have to kind of anticipate what's coming down the pipeline. And for us, with Antonio doing this for over a decade and me involved in it for the last 5-6 years in the cannabis space, you really start to build up the knowledge base it takes to see around that corner, to get a feel for what's coming and kind of anticipate the way rules and regulations are going to fall. And some of the big things that we've seen early on, especially here in Colorado, is the brands that were able to get onto the shelves earliest and stay on the shelves and be, real winners in the space from the consumer side. They went on to become, national brands as the rest of the United States has continued to legalize. Those early winners in the early markets have boded really well. So when you kind of look at it, we've got a 2-year head start on anybody coming into the market now. Not only were we a 2-year head start in places like the United Kingdom, we're 2 years ahead in the United States. We're expanding our brands out into Europe, as we've announced. That head start, in our opinion, is going to play out just in tremendous ways. I mean, you've got to imagine, some of these contracts that we've signed, they took over a year from the beginning, that when we first started talking to them until they were finally fully executed. And then, now in the implementation stage, that whole process took over a year. So you can imagine these companies that are just coming on board now, raising their money, putting their brand equity in place. They've got to go through that same process. And so while they're working on that, we're in execution phase. So we'll be on the same shelves that they're hoping to someday get on. And we'll just continue to manage that process. So those are some of the big items. Obviously, the legal space and the regulation space is very difficult. You have to have, some of the brightest people to help see you through that. With bringing on CMS last fall, and now we're working with different groups throughout the globe through their connection and their network. It's really giving us a tremendous advantage, because you can imagine every country that you go into is going to have their own special set of rules for CBD, and each product line can be treated differently. I think the UK has done a great job on getting out in front and saying, here's what we want everybody to do. We want you to go through the novel foods. Well, other countries could be going through that same process, whether it's through the universal process through the EU or, places outside of that. So, when you put it all together, those are our strengths. You would expect, any brand to be successful in a particular category. You would expect them to have experience in that space. And I think just because the legal environment of cannabis, you have a lot of players that wouldn't have any legal way of having experience in the space, because it hasn't been legalized in their country until very recently. And Antonio and I have been very fortunate. We kind of coined it as the Colorado is the Silicon Valley of cannabis. We're very fortunate to be right here at the epicenter where the entire movement started. We were one of the first places to legalize cannabis at an electoral level. We voted on it, and that's given us a decade head start. And so I think when the investors really kind of put their minds behind the whole story and they understand, how we got here, that it's a tremendous amount of hard work, a really dedicated focus. When you kind of hear us talk through the times, you'll start to get a feel that, we're very visionary. We know what we're trying to do. We're focused on it. We've executed the plan in perfection every step of the way. And now kind of the last piece of that puzzle is just the full on rollout of the stores. And it's just been a tremendous experience for us. And we hope to just continue to build that investor value and let the world see, what Zoetic and Chill are doing.
So you've got out of your 138 million pound market cap at the moment, you've got a couple of strong brands in there. You've got the US distribution network and obviously other geographies to follow. I suppose the only thing left is for us to see what kind of sales you manage to generate. Is that fair, or is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, no, that's a very fair assessment, and that's exactly what phase we're in right now, the execution phase. So, it's one thing getting on the shelves, which is a huge accomplishment, but we have to make sure our strategy aligns to have that sell-through rate that the Red Bulls have, the Gatorades have, because there's not a lot of shelf space available. So if you look at the energy space sector, for instance, there's thousands of energy drinks. There's only about 5 in any given convenience store. So we have to make sure that not only do we secure that shelf space that we have done, but we need to make sure our sell-through rate is high. And that's, brand awareness, education, still a newer product. And we have that strategy and that implementation happening right now. And that is the phase we're in, Zach. So we're excited to get to that revenue stage, that sell-through phase, but we have to have a very detailed, calibrated plan to make sure we accomplish that without sacrificing our shelf space.
The idea is that for instance, the Chill brand is, it's got the awareness now. Even I'm aware of it, having already, been following the RNSs and everything else. So the awareness is there, and you've got that footprint. Then you've got the first mover advantage, and you've got the brand awareness combined there, and then you've got the network to build on the distribution that you have. So basically, it's almost a mature situation now.
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, it's come together quite quickly from the market standpoint, just over the last, 18 months or so. But what you're really seeing is the culmination of years and years and years of work in the space. And so now it's, now we get into the fun part, the X's and O's, if you will, in a sports analogy. And so, that's the part we're most excited for. We've got a great team in place, the distribution partners that we continue to sign up and bring on board. I mean, they are just top tier. I mean, these are some of the leaders in all of the spaces, and obviously they specialize here in the U.S. in the C-store space. But the one that we are working on there in the U.K. that we've announced, I mean, they're very focused on the market that they're in, and those types of relationships. Obviously you open those doors with your product and your presentation and your numbers, but where you really get into it is giving them the confidence of our ability to execute. And that's, that's where the fun part begins, having the Schrader family behind us, and their insight and their knowledge in how to distribute products and what makes products sell really well in their stores, all their experience in the convenience stores through those years. I mean, those are the types of things that, you just can't go and purchase, that's the kind of stuff that you can only get from within. And nobody's writing books on it. That's, unfortunately for our competitors, they just don't have that type of caliber of people on their team. And, that's ultimately what's making us successful, and will continue to make us successful as we, go out through this journey.
My analogy is that you've reached cruising altitude now, and, Zoetic International Airways is on a smoother path. That the difficult part has been done. But I suppose there's still some kind of discount on the valuation of the company. If you were selling soft drinks or selling computers or something which is, let's say, conventional, presumably the valuation of the company would actually be higher. I mean, there seems that maybe there's still a discount because of the cannabis connection and people being slightly conservative in their outlook.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that people, as investors are looking at in the space. Obviously the world got to see the run up in Canada when Canada legalized cannabis nationally. So you got to see the run up of that, and then it came back down a little bit, and now it's on the rise again. I think you're starting to see the excitement build as rumors are starting to spread here in the U.S. on what may or may not happen as far as legalization in the U.S. goes. Obviously announcements like last year when the EU kind of decided how they were going to handle CBD and its classification. I mean, I think there's always going to be a sense of skepticism in a new industry. We are really big into finding places that are early to adopt to regulation. We feel like that's our best strategy is to gravitate towards those areas. That's why we liked the UK so much, and knowing that they were going to kind of get out ahead of the curve and set some guidance. We think that's important. The industry needs to be regulated like any other industry. And, coming out of, the cannabis space in Colorado, I mean, that's one of the heaviest regulated environments, you can operate in. I mean, the amount of oversight that obviously the Colorado government has in that space is tremendous. And not only did we get to operate in it, but we got to learn the systems and the processes that are basically being implemented all over the rest of the U.S. as far as their tracking systems go, and how they work through their validation and their testing and all those different requirements. And so I think investors should obviously be wise in how they're choosing the companies they invest in. We believe very strongly in the regulatory environment, and that's why we've reached out to CMS and worked so well with them in helping us with our strategy. But in the end, ultimately it comes down to the plant and the CBD derived from the plant, and all the different benefits that the world is starting to see from it. And we're hoping that in time more and more tests come out, more and more clinical studies will come out. And we're hoping the rest of the world will continue to see the benefits of what CBD can offer.
And would you say that there was there's always a slight regulatory risk behind the scenes, or is it something that you're ahead of that? You've factored it in, or you've got that covered?
Yeah, I think you always got to be kind of thinking out ahead and looking at the way different groups are interpreting current rules, or maybe the direction that a regulatory environment might be heading towards. So you've always got to be on your toes and paying attention to the way things change. But it's a good thing. The regulation is a good thing to some extent. It weeds out the bad players, and it starts setting benchmarks of what's going to be acceptable in the space. And anybody doing this for the right reason and trying to build a truly valuable brand is for regulation, and that's a good thing for us, and it's a good thing for our investors and our consumers. Our brands are really well sought after, obviously, and we want the consumers to know in confidence what they're purchasing, and be able to explain that to them the best that we can. And we hope that other brands follow the same suit. It's obviously going to have a lot of change as time goes on. We probably see a world in our minds where CBD would be a pretty accepted thing in most households, but you got to start with the regulation first, and then things build from there. And while that's being built out, of course, our focus is to get on the shelves and follow the rules and continue down that process.
And I suppose, there's no difference for you as a CBD player to a soft drink maker where they make a sugar tax, or they change the rules on how much percentage there should be in sugar. That's something that you just have to live with the changing fashions and the changing rules.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Any consumer product will go through changes, and we've seen it in other spaces, and whether it's energy drinks, or like you said, soda pops. They all have different rules that change in time, and you just stay up with it. You make sure you have a really good crew and legal team in front of it, and you just adjust as you need to.
I think on that note, Trevor Taylor and Antonio Russo, thank you very much indeed for taking the time.
Thanks, Zach. Really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Remember to visit our website for more news and other podcasts at www.share-talk.com.